Okay, today we're going to move on to the blood pressure vital sign. Today's notes are going to be super short because we usually spend the rest of class practicing taking blood pressures on each other. Won't. We'll not be able to do that. If we ever go back to face, I will be so happy, and we will spend so much time doing blood pressures and doing pulses and things like that. For this unique situation, I'm going to link a couple of videos where you can watch it kind of explained a little bit better. I'm also going to link to a game where you push like play or whatever, and it will give you the sounds that you're going to hear when you're actually taking a blood pressure, and it'll kind of show the blood pressure dial, the sphygmomanometer dial, and what it does. It's not a perfect game. Every now and then you'll put in what is a right answer and it'll tell you it's wrong, but it will really get you used to like listening and hearing at the same time you're seeing the little sphygmomanometer move. So I recommend playing that over and over and over and over in lieu of actually being able to try it. So blood pressure. Blood pressure is the amount of pressure that the blood puts on artery walls. It's only in arteries. We don't take pressures in veins or anything like that. A normal reading is 120/80. It's mmHg, it's millimeters of mercury, is the little units that you'll see with it, but the numbers are 120/80, and it's always expressed like a fraction like that. The first number will always be higher, and that's your systolic pressure. If you remember back to Health Science 1, systole means contract. So systolic pressure is when the ventricles, but specifically the left ventricle, because that's when it's pushing it out and into the body, contracts. So when it squeezes and it squeezes blood out, there's more blood in the artery. And so the pressure is higher. Versus that second number, which is your diastolic number, that's when the ventricle relaxes. And so while it's filling back up with blood, the amount of blood in your arteries lowers a little bit. And so then that number is the amount of pressure that the blood is putting on the artery walls when your heart isn't actively squeezing, when that left ventricle isn't actively squeezing. So a normal range for systolic, the contracting one, is anywhere between 100 to 140, and diastolic is anywhere between 60 and 90. I will say that it's like pulses in that even a little too high we don't like, because over time it'll wear your heart out. But if it's too low, there's really no such thing until you pass out, and then that was too low. And pulses are the exact same way. If you think about it, the blood has to squeeze hard enough to overcome the pressure in the arteries. So if you have high blood pressure in your arteries, your heart has to squeeze harder to get blood out. It's like blowing into a new balloon versus one that's been blown into 1,000 times. The harder it is to blow into it, the harder you have to blow to make that air come out. And so the more pressure your arteries have in them, the harder your heart has to squeeze to overcome that pressure and actually get the blood out. And over years, that will wear your heart down. And so that's one of the main causes of heart failure in people, which is just the most depressing disorder. So for pulse, we talked about things that raise and lower, and we're going to do the same thing for blood pressure. So notice again that drugs can do either. So upper drugs, stimulant drugs, will increase it, while lowering drugs, depressant drugs, downers, will decrease it. Elevating things are anxiety. It amazes me how quickly your blood pressure jumps up. When people are scared and I take their blood pressure, and they're like, oh my God, it's never that high. And I'm like, well, you're terrified. And then as soon as they calm down, it goes back down. Like it's an immediate jump up. Eating, I get it. I get excited over eating as well. Exercise, obviously, to deal with the increased oxygen demands. And excitement. Excitement is just happy anxiety. Factors that lower, we already talked about downers, depressant drugs. Also bleeding out. So excessive loss of blood. If you bleed out, there's not enough blood in your arteries to really be putting pressure on the walls. And that's one of the types of shock. It's called hypovolemic shock. Hypo meaning too low, and volemic meaning volume. So too low volume of blood, and you go into shock. When you rest or when you go to sleep, it lowers like everything else. And then it just goes ahead and lists shock. So there's different categories of shock. Either your heart isn't pumping well, and it's that kind of shock. You're bleeding out, and it's that kind of shock. Or Let's see, blood, pulse, oh, or arteries. So like think anaphylactic shock, where you got stung by a bee and you're allergic, and so all your arteries dilate and the pressure drops. All those will lower blood pressure. Symptoms of high blood pressure. So notice that first one, generally none. That's the really dangerous thing about high blood pressure. People don't know they have it unless you go to the doctor and you get someone to take your blood pressure, and then they're like, "Oh, it's just high because I'm here and I'm scared," so they'll brush it off. Also, because you don't really usually have any symptoms of it, it's hard to get people to stay on their blood pressure medicine because they don't feel sick. And then they take their blood pressure medicine every day for a few months. They come back to the doctor and we're like, "Oh, your blood pressure is good now." And so they think, "Oh, I'm healed. I can stop taking these pills." No, dummy. Those pills are what's keeping your blood pressure down. The second you stop taking them, it goes right back up. But you can't reason with them. Every now and then, someone's blood pressure will go super high and it'll cause a headache. But usually, we call it the silent killer because it doesn't have any symptoms of low blood pressure. Now that does present. So remember, there's no such thing as too low until you passed out. So that's it. Dizziness, you stand up and everything goes dark. Legit passing out. Also fatigue. So people with really low blood pressure can feel tired a lot. Remember that anytime anything is super abnormal, you need to report it to someone. Also, if it's newly abnormal, especially. So, like if this guy's blood pressure is 140 over 90 and it's been 140 over 90 every 8 hours that I've taken it, please don't wake a doctor up for that. But, if all of a sudden it's 190 over 100, dear God, yeah, page somebody. This is the game that I'm going to link on a little sheet for you, so you don't have to worry that you can't click on this one. And I'm going to link the blood pressure scale. So sometimes it's hard to read steps, like to read out instructions for something to physically do, which is why I'm going to also put those videos there for you. And then when we get back to class, if we get back to class, we'll also do something called combined vital signs, TPR-BP, temperature, pulse, respiration, and blood pressure. So you take a temperature, you take pulse and respiration. Remember, you do that at the same time. With the first 30 seconds, you're actually taking the pulse. And then the second 30 seconds, you keep your finger there so they don't know it, but you're actually counting their breaths. And then blood pressure. So it would be like a start to finish, you walk in the door. "Hello, my name is Tyler. I'll be your nurse today. I'm going to take your vital signs," and you go through all of them. And that's it for today. Okay, guys, I miss you. Bye-bye.